On January the 5th, 2025, UK holiday airline Jet2 retired their last Boeing 757s from passenger service. Not only bringing 20 years of 757 flights to a close, but nearly 42 years of UK airline passenger 757s. The final two flights were between Manchester and Geneva. I was extremely fortunate and managed to book a seat on one of these flights. I have to say, this flight was certainly an experience, which I am looking forward to sharing in this video. As soon as we left our hotel, the day was already off to an interesting start. Heavy snow was hitting most airports across the UK. I flew on the outbound flight from Manchester to Geneva, the last UK soil departure of a UK airline 757. To my relief, the flight went from Manchester's Terminal 2. After my last 757 flight, when I flew with Jet2 to Faro, back in summer 2024, went from Terminal 1, which is notorious for security and flight delays. Manchester's Terminal 2 is part of the first phase of the airport's redevelopment plan, with the majority of the terminal getting rebuilt inside out, new departure lounges, brand new gates, pretty much everything. From a passenger's perspective, the experience is flawless, completely better in every way possible to Terminal 1, and pretty much a much more seamless, hassle-free experience. For the start of the day, the terminal was pretty busy with all the early morning holiday and ski flights. Heading to the gate, it was apparent the snow was just getting heavier and heavier with this storm. And at that point, I had a funny feeling there would be implications with the flight. The gate for the flight was busy, and it appeared to be a sold out flight. The av geeks though, like myself, stood out like a sore thumb. You could tell us all straight away, everyone excited but yet pretty sombre. There was quite a few familiar faces at the gate as well, so it was nice to see a few new faces and catch up with people I hadn't seen in a little while. Would also like to give a special mention to Jonathan Winton, who was also on this flight and this trip. Make sure to check out his channel as well. The aircraft was parked on a remote stand, so from the gate it was a bus. However, at this point it became apparent that the airport was snow closed. The airport was snow closed until at least 9 AM. This put at least a 3-hour delay on the flight, which actually worked in our favour. And it certainly made the flight a bit more interesting, but I'll get more into that later on in the video. The aircraft that would be doing the honours of the last revenue Jet2 757 flights was G-LSAI, which is in fact the oldest passenger, the oldest passenger 757 flying in the world. And at the time of recording, it was the 13th oldest 757 to still be flying. The aircraft rolled off Boeing's production line in Renton in November 1987, making it a whopping 37.3 years old. Most aircraft that are flying these days, you're lucky if they're 15, 20, maybe even 25 years old, unless you're an American airline. But for this to be flying 37 years later is truly impressive and just shows the versatility and engineering marvel that is the Boeing 757, which has really stood this test of time. Initially, the aircraft was delivered to Chinese airline CAAC in November 1987, which the following year became China Southern Airlines. It joined Jet2's fleet in November 2006. On the same day, two other airframes joined the fleet, G-LSAG and G-LSAH, both of which also operated for CAAC and China Southern Airlines. Boarding the aircraft was certainly a bit of an experience. Heavy snowfall, which we are certainly not used to in here at all, hammering down making it freezing, but then providing some very unique shots, so it was cold but I got some interesting photos. In terms of the history behind Jet2's 757 fleet, They have operated for the airline for nearly 20 years, and these two final flights bring that to a close. Their first two 757s joined the fleet in October and December 2005. And at its peak, Jet2 have operated anywhere between 12 to 15 757s during the peak summer seasons. This was a mixture of their own 757s and 757s they've leased for other airlines during the peak holiday season. My seat for the flight down to Geneva was seat 9A, offering a perfect view of the engine. Once everyone was on board, the cabin crew announced that the plane would be delayed until at least after 9 o'clock. So the pilots, knowing the occasion of the flight, said passengers wishing to visit the cockpit could do so. And that was when all you heard was ding. You just had to look round most of the cabin at the window seats with all the call bells on to spot the avgeeks. One small detail about the overhead panel is the writing is still got the Chinese writing for no smoking and seatbelt signs, pretty much showing the aircraft's origin. It was really nice to visit a 757 cockpit again. Jet2 had retrofitted all their cockpits with glass cockpits, updating the classic flight deck with 4 big screens rather than smaller little screens and panels. I asked the pilots what their thoughts on the retirements were. They said it was sad and it was a shame that they were going, but they also said the 757s were a pilot's airplane and they were looking forward to transitioning to the A321neos, which Jet2 has well over 150 of on order, replacing their 757s, their classic 737s, and eventually their 737 next generations down the line. As the flight was delayed for well over 3 hours, the cabin crew did start a mini onboard service with some drinks and snacks. And I also reviewed the normal stuff that I would in flight on the ground. So the legroom was alright. It was average, but it was enough for the 1.5-hour flight to Geneva. The seat pocket contained a safety card, Jet2's in-flight magazine, their shop, and their onboard menu. When the cabin crew came round, I decided to go with some Pepsi Max and some shortbread. Signs that the airport was shortly going to be reopening with the plane getting de-iced. This was actually the first time I've been on a plane when it's been getting de-iced, so it was an interesting thing to watch. And I also don't tend to travel much during the winter months. The atmosphere on board was actually really nice. The avgeeks on board created this very upbeat, celebrationary atmosphere that the normal passengers on board bought into, which meant everyone on board was in great spirits, despite the delay. Yes, it was meant to be a normal flight, but it certainly didn't feel like one. The clearest sign yet that would be shortly on our way was this Virgin A330-300 taxiing into gate. Not long after, the pilots came on and said we were pushing back, being one of the first flights to leave once the airport reopened. With having the perfect view of the engines, the sound from the 2 Rolls-Royce RB211s were incredible as always. Like I did with my last Jet2 757 video, there will be no commentary or music for the takeoff. Commentary will resume at the in-flight section of the video. The takeoff was also full power as the plane had been de-iced, and the sound was just absolutely incredible.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, a very warm welcome on board this Boeing 757 luxury liner to Geneva. Your flight crew today is Captain David Ricks, and also in the first officer seat, Captain Charlie Collier. Our flight time down to Geneva is expected to be around 1 hour and 34 minutes. We'll be cruising at an altitude of approximately 35,000 feet. It's now time to take you through the safety procedures for this Boeing 757-200 aircraft, so if I could just ask you for your full attention. Please remove any headphones and listen carefully. Please check that any baggage or loose items are safely put underneath the seat in front of you. Thanks for listening, I'll be on our way soon.
Now that sound was certainly something else. That has to be one of the steepest takeoffs I've experienced on a plane. The reason for that takeoff, to get all the de-icing fluid off the aircraft, pilots have to go full power so the fluid comes off when the plane accelerates down the runway. Now, I actually forgot about this until I checked in. I pre-ordered a cheese and ham toastie when booking the flight. I used Jet2's pre-order meal service. If you're wanting to know more about that, I did go into detail in it in my last 757 video. Even though I'd pre-ordered the cheese and ham toastie, I also decided to buy a Starbucks hot chocolate. Jet2 also sell the Starbucks sachets on their flights. A little bit of history on the 757 with UK Airlines. The 757 entered service in 1983 and flag carrier British Airways was one of the launch customers for the type, at their peak operating well over 50 757s. Airlines that have operated the type over the years include the now defunct Monarch, Thomas Cook, you've also got Titan Airways, TUI Airways and Jet2. There's been a few other smaller airlines here and there over the years, but your main ones, really, are your Holiday Airlines and British Airways. Now for a little look at the toilet. It had that 80s kind of feel to it, very retro. You could tell the plane was from the 1980s. It also had a little flush handle. Nowadays aircraft have buttons instead. You can tell by this shot the cabin was pretty much full. The flight was sold out. Now one thing I do like about Jet2's cabins, how they have most of their destinations along their overhead bins. The scenery descending into Geneva was absolutely stunning. I did take quite a few scenic shots on the descent into Geneva. The commentary will resume after the very scenic landing into Geneva. Overall, the flight from Manchester to Geneva with Jet2 was incredible. One of the best flights I've done to date. Not just because it was the final UK Airline 757 flight to depart from the UK, but also because Jet2 are a really good airline. Their onboard service is great, good onboard menu with reasonable prices, great pre-order meal service, very friendly, polite and attentive cabin crew, and all in all reasonable value for money. In terms of this flight being significant in itself, it was great and special to be able to fly on it, and it's something I would treasure for a while, as the 757 is one of my most favourite aircraft types. You just can't beat the sound from those Rolls-Royce engines, and to get a full power takeoff, even better. In terms of the airport, it was great to fly from Manchester's Terminal 2 rather than Terminal 1 in this flight, given the hassle I've had through Terminal 1 in the past. Even though the flight was delayed well over 3 hours, this did go in our favour. It meant a daytime departure from Manchester and a cockpit visit. I doubt many of the passengers on board would have been able to get one if there was no delay and the flight went on time. Even though the weather was really bad with the snowstorm, it really went in my favour. Not all hope is lost with the 757 just yet. Yes, it has definitely stood the test of time since the 1980s, and now unfortunately no UK airlines fly in passenger service. However, United operate 5 daily flights to Edinburgh in the summer transatlantic. There is no retirement date yet, but they will be retired before the end of the decade. Icelandair still operate a fleet of 757s to the UK and plan to phase them out around 2027. The largest 757 operator in the world, Delta Airlines, still flies 115 757s in America, and they have no plans to retire them. Also recently started retrofitting a number of 757s with brand new cabins. The 757 will still also be in the skies of the UK as freighters, with DHL having a sizable fleet. And finally, the onboard atmosphere. It was nice that it was very upbeat and celebrationary, despite the delay thanks to the snow. Now, I know it's the final Jet2 757 flight I'll take, but it's definitely not my last 757 flight. I have a few plans in the works for the near future, and hopefully I'll be on a few more 757s later in the year.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Take care. Cheers. Thanks very much, Ben. See you in a bit.
On January the 8th, G-LSAI was flown to St Athan in Wales to be scrapped, where the remaining 6 757s that have been withdrawn gradually since November 2024 are all getting scrapped. After landing and getting out the terminal, we and Jonathan went across to the French side of Geneva to get the last 757 UK airline flight depart back to Manchester. And there you go, with that takeoff, that brings an end to an era. Nearly 20 years of 757 operations at Jet2 and 42 years of UK airline passenger 757s. And it was great to be able to experience and be a part of such an important chapter in UK aviation history. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you have enjoyed it. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.